Just before Saint Jean-Baptiste, Premier Legault upset many when he told reporters that, and I quote, "It's important that we don't put all cultures on the same level. That's why we oppose multiculturalism." So this had a lot of impact, and especially on the diverse communities that make up Montreal and Quebec. A lot of reaction. Joining us is Farid Khan, founder of Canadians United Against Hate. So, Farid, first of all, maybe tell us more about this organization you founded, Canadians United Against Hate.
Yeah, Canadian United Against Hate was founded a number of years ago. It had its roots in the reaction to the Quebec City mosque shooting, and I and a number of other people who were active after that weren't getting anywhere. So, in terms of getting government action, so we decided to establish a advocacy group, Canadians United Against Hate, to basically promote the policies to counter hate, white supremacy, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, anti-LGBTQ2 hate, because we'd seen it growing over time, and it seemed like governments weren't doing what was needed to take action against it.
So you're based in Quebec, correct?
Based in the National Capital Region. Yes, I live in Quebec, but we have a presence in all parts of the country.
Across the country. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, what was your reaction when you heard the Premier's comment?
Well, you know what? Nothing surprises me that comes out of Francois Legault's mouth when it comes to issues of diversity. Essentially, what he's saying to racialized Quebecers is that your culture doesn't matter, and Quebec Francophone culture is superior, and that's why we're doing the things we need to do, because we want to maintain that superiority. And frankly, that's the sort of talk that you would hear from fascist demagogues. Anytime someone says, we are superior to you, that is dangerous. Anytime someone says that our culture or our people are better than you who aren't us, that's saying that we are exceptional, and therefore we need to do whatever we need to do to maintain our superiority. And that is the foundation of hate, racism, and bigotry, because it says to people who aren't part of the majority group that you don't matter. You know what? You either be like us, or if you're not, then you are not. You are not the same, and therefore we can do what we need to do to make sure that you are suppressed and we are elevated.
Okay, so those are pretty big words you just used, and I think I want to not push back, but I just want to offer this. So Premier Legault, now in this context here, a lot of people were thinking, well, maybe he was just clumsily trying to say that, you know, there has to be a way to also promote, protect, and defend the French culture, the Quebec culture, the initial culture. And so so how do you balance both? You know what I'm saying here? The idea here is, I mean, so if you have the idea that the French-speaking population and the French culture is threatened, and that there's no debate around that you need to protect and put in place measures to promote, protect, and defend the French culture. Is that something that can also be done and without necessarily offending the other cultures?
Well, I would say that those measures were already in place. Of course, you know, we have to go back to the election of the PQ in the 70s, which is where this all initially started, and it was a pushback against the dominance of, you know, English and Anglophones in Quebec society. And measures were put in place. And today, you have more Quebecers speaking French than there have ever been before. You have more children being taught in French than there have ever been before. Immigrants who come here know that Quebec is a Francophone society, and they embrace the fact that they have to speak in French. They go out and learn French. There are government supports, both federally and provincially. Rights are entrenched in the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms about French language rights in this country. So I would say that the mechanisms that are needed are in place. Our federal government is bilingual. Our major federal institutions are bilingual. So I would say those measures are in place. However, when you have provincial politicians who use these sorts of wedge issues to try and stir up trouble, it's because they don't really want to acknowledge that there is strength already in the French culture. And I'll give you an example. Look at New Brunswick. Mm-hmm. New Brunswick has a very strong Acadian French culture and history, and they are a population that is a tenth or less the size of Quebec, and yet they have a vibrancy that has allowed them to maintain their culture and language. Quebec being the much larger Francophone society, how can you say that there is a threat there to the viability of French culture in Canada, in Quebec, when you've got this much smaller culture in New Brunswick that has maintained itself over the centuries? So I challenge those who say that the French language is under threat. I'd say it's more vibrant today than it has ever been.
Well, there's a lot of counter arguments to that. I'm running out of time, but the idea here, I understand what you're saying, Fareed, and I think it's definitely a conversation we're going to need to continue. The fact is, I believe in something called interculturalism, where you can actually recognize the fact that the French culture has to be defended and the French language has to be promoted, but you can do it while respecting other cultures and not necessarily creating this hierarchy, which is just divisive and doesn't further anybody's aims and doesn't help working and living together and moving forward together. So, Fareed, I really appreciate it. That's all the time I have this morning, but I appreciate you coming on this morning.